everyone, and welcome back to Next Stitch Designs with me, Sylvia. Today is a stitch day. In today's video I'm going to show you how to crochet this beautiful hexagon pattern, which I will be using in my next video to create a beautiful hexagon cardigan. As I was working with this yarn, which is DK, but it's kind of dark and it's very difficult to see on the video, so I decided to do separate video first so you can learn how to do this hexagon first, and in the next video I will show you how to put the cardigan all together. So for this video I will be using this light color, which is pink, and it's a mercerized cotton. For my cardigan, I'll be using DK yarn as well. So for this pattern, I'll be using the same way, just different color. So you can see much better. And also, I will be using 4mm hook. And this pattern is amazing. You can use any yarn you like or prefer. And of course, recommended hook size 40. And we are going to start with the magic ring. Hold your yarn and like so, wrap it around your 2 fingers and create a cross. Go under this first one, on top of the second one, pull it down and twist your hook like so. Now go back under this one here, like so, and pull through the loop you had on your hook, like this. And this is your magic ring. Next, we are going to chain 3. And this chain of 1 is not counting as your first chain. Now chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. This chain of 3 is counting as your first double crochet. Now you can make this ring a little bit smaller, like so, so it's not too loose and it's easier to work inside. Next, we are going to place 2 more double crochet inside this magic ring to complete our first cluster. Yarn over, insert, bring it up, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 2. And we need 1 more double crochet. And now we have our first cluster. And this chain of 3 is counting as our first double crochet. Next, we are going to chain 1, like so. Once you chain 1, you are going to place 3 more double crochet inside this magic ring. So your second cluster, 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1. This chain of 1 is your corner space. So now we have cluster, chain 1, cluster, chain 1. Now I'm using DK weight yarn. If you are using thicker yarn, you can chain 2 for your corners. Next cluster, 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, and we need altogether 6 clusters with a chain of 1 between them. So I have 1 cluster, chain 1, second cluster, chain 1, third cluster, chain 1. Fourth cluster, chain 1. Fifth cluster, chain 1. Chain 1. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So altogether I have 6 clusters, and chain, once you complete your 6th cluster, chain 1. So before we close our round, we are going to count again, and we need to make sure we have 6 clusters. So our first cluster is here, chain 1. Second cluster, chain 1. Third cluster, chain 1. Fourth cluster, chain 1. Fifth cluster, chain 1. And sixth cluster, chain 1. So now we can close our ring. To do so, you are going to slip stitch on top of this chain of 3. And remember, we did not count this chain as our first chain. So 1, 2, and on top of this chain of 3, insert, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loop you had on your hook, like so, to complete our round 1. Now pull this yarn end and close it as tight as you can. And this is our round 1 completed. Round 2, chain 3. 1, 2 and 3. Once you chain 3, there is a chain of 3 under this chain of 3. And next to this chain of 3 is a space. In that space, you will place 2 more double crochet. Yarn over, insert. And now we have our first cluster, because this chain of 3 is counting as our first one, and then we place 2 more double crochet into this space here. This will be our corner. Once we go all the way around, we will place another cluster into the same space, and we will complete this corner once we go all the way around. So not to worry about this one now. So we have only 1 cluster here. Find the next chain 1 space and place 1 cluster, chain 1 and 1 more cluster into the same space to create our corner. So 1 double crochet, 2 and 3. That's our cluster. Chain 1 and 1 more cluster into the same space. Now, as you can see, we have done this first cluster and we did not chain between. If you are using DK yarn like me, you don't need to chain because the stitches will look nicer when they are nice and tight when we work with this thin DK yarn. If you are using Aran or Chunky, chain 1 between your clusters. For the corners as well, if you are working with DK yarn like me, you will do cluster, chain 1 for the corner and cluster. If you are using Aran or Chunky, thicker yarn, then DK, then chain 2 for the corner. It will look a little bit nicer. Okie dokie. Next, find the next space here and work next corner. 3 double crochet, chain 1 and 3 double crochet into the same space, because this round 2 is our corner round when we are preparing for the next round. So in this round 2 we are working on the corners. So we have next corner completed. So we have cluster, chain 1, cluster, find the next space and do exactly the same. Work your next corner. So cluster, chain 1 and another cluster. So 3 double crochet, chain 1 and 3 double crochet, like so. Again, next corner, 1, 2 and 3, chain 1 and 1, 2 and 3, find the next corner, so this chain 1 space, and do exactly the same. Cluster, chain 1 and cluster. So I finished this last corner here, and now I need to complete this first one. So as you remember, we only done one cluster here, and I said once we go all the way around, as this round 2 was our corner round, because we were creating corners in every space all the way around, and this one was on its own. Now we need to complete it. So this was my corner here, cluster, chain 1, cluster. I will not chain between, and now into the same space where is this cluster, you will place one more cluster, so we will complete this corner. So 1, 2 and 3. Now we are going to chain 1 and complete this corner. So we need to slip stitch on top of this chain of 3, 1, 2, and on top of this chain of 3, insert your hook and slip stitch, like so, to complete this round 2. And as you can see, we completed this corner as well for this round 2. Now for round 3 we are going to chain 3, 1, 2 and 3, like so. So we chain 3, and we will always start every round like so. And also every round we start in the corner. So the seam will be in the corner and it won't be visible somewhere on the side. So the seam will be in the corner and it will look much nicer. So we will always start in the corner, and we will always start every round with chain of 3. So as I said, we are going to start in the corner. We chain 3. And it's counting as your first double crochet. So in this space here, under this chain of 3, you will work 2 more double crochet to have your first cluster. And again, once we go all the way around, we will place another cluster into the same corner to complete this corner. And you will do so for the whole pattern like so. Here, as you can see, we have side, corner, side, corner, side, corner, side, corner, side, corner, and side, corner. So in the corners, you will always do the same. In the corners, you will place cluster, chain 1, cluster. If you're using thicker yarn, you will do cluster, chain 2, cluster. On the sides, where are these spaces? Here, 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 you will always place only one cluster. But as you go bigger and bigger, you will have more of these spaces on each side. But you will always work only one cluster in each space. In the corners, you will always do the same. Cluster, chain 1 or 2, and cluster. So let's work on this round 3. So now we are on the side. As you can see, this is the side. So on the side, we place only one cluster. 1, 2, and 3. So 3 double crochet. We do not chain between the clusters. Only if you are using thicker yarn, you can, and you don't have to. You can work on it and you will see what you prefer. Now I am here in the corner, and we already know in each corner you will do exactly the same. So you will do cluster, chain 1 for thicker yarn, chain 2, 1, 2, and 3, and second cluster. So that was my corner. Now I'm on the side again. So we know on this side we will work only one cluster on its own. 1, 2, and 3. And again, I'm in the corner, so we already know we work cluster, chain 1, cluster. I'm on the side, and I have only one space here, and I will work only one cluster on its own on the side. Again, corner, so we already know it's cluster, chain 1, and one more cluster. On this side, again, cluster on its own. In the corner, we already know it's a cluster, chain 1 for thicker yarn, chain 2. Another cluster, cluster, chain 1, cluster. And now I am on the side again. Corner. Cluster, chain 1, cluster. Side, one cluster here. And now, as we already know, we only done one cluster here, but it was our corner. So now we went all the way around, and we need to complete this corner. As we know, cluster, chain 1, cluster. So we need to place one more cluster into the same space to complete this first corner. Chain 1 and slip stitch on top of this chain of 3. Like so, and slip stitch, and there we have our corner completed. And that's how you are going to finish every round exactly the same way. Chain 3, 1, 2, and 3, and we are ready to start round 4. So for round 4, you will do exactly the same. As I said, we will always start in the corner because this way you will have hidden seam and it will look much nicer. On each side, you will have more spaces. The bigger you go, the more spaces you will have on each side. So this time I have space here on this side, then I have corner, then I have 2 spaces here. The bigger you go, you will have more spaces on each side, but the corners will be always the same. So I will show you this last round and then I'll let you work on your hexagon for as big as you need. So I will show you only the start and end. So we chain 3 and into the same place we already know we need to create our first cluster. Once we go all the way around, we will complete it by placing one more cluster into the same space. So I have space here, so I will place cluster on its own because we are on the side. And then I will have space here, so I will place cluster as well on its own with no chain between, like so. Now in the corner, you already know corners are always the same. Cluster, chain 1 or 2 and cluster. So chain 1 for thin yarn like DK, chain 2 for thicker yarn. And that's it. That's how we are going to work all the way around. Once you come here, you will complete it as we did here. You will place one more cluster in this corner and slip stitch on top of this chain of 3. And I am finishing this round, and as I said, we need to complete this first corner. So we will place one more cluster there. Chain 1 and slip stitch on top of this chain of 3 like so. And this is how you're gonna work on your hexagon pattern for as many rounds as you need for your project. And in the next video, I will show you how to crochet hexagon cardigan. But this pattern can be used for many different projects. And as you go bigger and bigger, your hexagon will be curling a little bit. And that's perfectly normal because we'll be folding it to create our cardigan. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please don't forget to like it, share it, and of course don't forget to subscribe to my channel Unique Stitch Designs for more ideas from me, Sylvia, and please don't forget to find me on social medias. I'm on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you very much for watching.